All right, I'll call the March 9th Capital Committee to order at 10:02. In accordance with Mass General laws, I need to ask if anybody else is recording it. Hearing none, I am recording this meeting for the purpose of minutes and for rebroadcast on LCAT. All right, so first things first. We have minutes first, right? I forgot to pull my agenda up.
I would move to approve the minutes of February 23rd, 2021.
Second?
Second.
Ryan, I just had that one change. If you remember on the equipment that's shared between sewer and stormwater.
Yep.
I think it's 50-50 to each fund.
Yeah.
Unless you already made that correction. I didn't look at the minutes after that.
I did not. So let's see, minutes of 2:23. Which part did you want to fix?
Where you've talked about the $261,000 expense for that piece of equipment that's being shared between stormwater and sewer.
Yep.
It's that 261 is only 50%, and I didn't think that was clear from the minutes.
Okay. So I'll add that 50% of cost.
I'll forward Ryan's email to you too, so you can kind of
All right.
just.
I will amend my motion to include Mary's change as noted.
Do I have a second for the amended motion?
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Jim's an aye. Steve is an aye. He's muted. Ralph
Aye.
and Mary.
Aye.
All right, those minutes are approved. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of March 2nd.
I just had one question on it, Ryan, and that was the second bullet on page 2. Says Bruce stated that this project would cost $200,000 until it is complete.
Oh, yep.
And I
$200,000 a
wondered
year.
whether we should $200,000 per year.
Okay, yeah, I updated that.
With that change, I was fine with these minutes and would move to approve the March 2nd, 2021 minutes with that change.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, Mary,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
and Jim.
Yes.
All right, those minutes are approved. Minutes are done. So now, Mark, are you ready?
As ready as I'll ever be.
All right. The
He's going to
floor
make
is
a
yours.
presentation about his capital requests.
Oh, good morning, everybody. Thank you for the invitation to meet with you. Thank you, Ryan, for letting me know about it. I'm new to this and this the format as to how you guys do things, but I did want to introduce myself to those of you who I haven't met yet and do the best I can to explain the requests we have in. Given the time frame which I started in this position, which was January 19th, I was given just the reality of this time of year, a rather a short turnaround on both capital and operating budget. So I don't mean to sound like I'm making excuses, but I'm an paralysis by analysis type of guy at times, and in the perfect world, I would have liked to have had a little bit more time to soak some of this stuff in and to formulate some thoughts and get a few more ideas. But reality is, at least for this year, I'm really largely relying on the past and on history and my understanding of what's been done before, and relying on the advice of my supervisors here on the needs that are presented, and it all seemed reasonable to me. I don't think, honestly, if I had that much more time, I don't think I would have necessarily altered this much. I definitely have some bigger vision ideas along terms of years from now, which will definitely impact capital. But in terms of next fiscal year, I think what I've presented here and prepared is reasonable and fair and what our department needs and hopes to get. I think given the size of it, the request really involves 3 vehicles. 2 marked cruisers for regular patrol use and a pickup truck to be semi-marked essentially and used as primarily as a utility vehicle for different things. The size of our fleet right now in terms of marked cruisers is we roll with around 8 cars or so. Given that the amount of officers we have on the road on any given shift, which is typically 4 on a shift at a time, using those vehicles, natural life cycle of those. There is, I'm told, one of the things that's changed a little bit in recent history is now that we've have all of our dispatching services through Westcom, we actually have the ability to have more officers on patrol. So there's a little bit more vehicle use happening that way. So I think it's a good pattern to try to keep us on of 2 vehicles a year. I understand it's like everything, it gets more and more expensive every year as the prices of things naturally go up. But I think the trade-off when you reduce that, and I saw this in my prior department where I worked up in Greenfield, where we would typically go for 3 vehicles a year. And then one year we got completely zeroed out and told no vehicles. And just the cascading effect of that lasted, it took us years to recover from that in terms of, the degradation of the fleet, rising maintenance costs, and things like that. And even now this budget year, we're seeing, we're going to go over in our vehicle maintenance line with just, some natural things that have happened. We still haven't taken delivery of every vehicle from the prior, although we're in the process now of hopefully getting the last of last year's finally online and and going here. It's just, as you all know, I'm preaching, I think, to the choir here. Just because something is approved doesn't mean we have it on July 1 or even shortly thereafter. And obviously with the pandemic and other things that have happened, supply lines in these areas were greatly impacted this year. I'm hoping that in next fiscal year, that won't be the case. So my request includes, the 2 marked vehicles, like I said, just because I believe that will, that is the sweet spot of keeping the patrol vehicles, which are used frequently, and, are really high demand type of use and critical use, of course, keeping us able to cycle those through enough to where, when they're just kind of getting to the point of, all right, now they're starting to really cost us a lot in maintenance as things start to naturally break down and need replacement. We can cycle them out to a lower priority use, whether it be within our own department or, my hope is to, we have our unmarked fleet up to where it should be and reliable needs to be, then, I'm certainly open to repurposing and these vehicles coming off the police line to other town departments as well. I'm Blogman, a supporter of doing that, of sharing our vehicles in that way. It's harder in some ways than it used to be because of the design and the things that go into police cruisers now that didn't used to. The things that come right out of the factory and manufacturer does make it a little bit more difficult in terms of like the back seats and things like that. But still, they can certainly be used by other departments once we're done with them. The pickup truck is something that I really think that we could make good use of here. One of the things I noticed when I first started here was that, in going out to the range to qualify, for example, as I had to get initially qualified on the firearm I'm carrying, I noticed that the 2 officers who are my instructors, loading up their personal pickup trucks with targets and equipment and all those sorts of things that you need to bring to the range. And it just kind of reminded me of, well, that kind of stinks that we have to have our officers use their personal vehicles to do that sort of thing, just to carry things like that. Is it unreasonable? Is it outlandish? No, but what if I had a department full of people who drove, Honda Fits or Toyota Priuses? I think we'd have, a bit more of a challenge in getting that stuff there. So, ideally in the perfect world, I'd really rather not have to rely on officers using their personal vehicles for work purposes like that. In terms of, bringing equipment around like that. There's also occasions where, we have to, pick up bicycles, whether they're, stolen, lost, whatever, recovered, or other bulky items that just won't fit in a normal police cruiser very easily. And I think the pickup truck could help us do that. If we had one on hand, we would keep the truck stocked with road closure, materials, barricades, signs, cones, whatever. We could keep it stocked with those things so it's readily available if we have an incident developing where we need to quickly close a road. And it's off hours, DPW can't get there, immediately quickly to help us out with that. We could at least have something set up. Officer could quickly grab that vehicle, use it for that purpose. It would also be a good vehicle to use for us for training. And training is something that we're seeing with going to come under more of an emphasis now, even more than it has been with the recent police reform bill and the certification requirements. We're going to be sending officers to training more than ever. And I think a vehicle like that would be good in that it could transport, comfortably up to 4 officers to go together to a class, whereas currently constituted officers typically travel to training oftentimes in their personal vehicles, which again is not unheard of in the industry. It happens, but that then incurs an expense to the town of mileage reimbursement and things like that. It can, at times, if something bad were to happen on the way to or from training with the officers in terms of an accident or something, it raises questions of were they on duty or not, and things like that. So I just think that having the truck available for something like that, we could make use of it that way as well. It's certainly not a vehicle that would get everyday use like a marked cruiser does, but it would, so it would have a good lifespan. I wouldn't be coming back in 3 years asking for a new truck, but it would have a really good lifespan for us. But I think we would use it enough to recognize the value of it, and it would be a real asset to us in a lot of ways. And there's other ways I'm not even thinking of. I think that it could help us that I just haven't even thought of yet.
All right. Thank you, Mark. We'll open up to the rest of the committee for questions. Ralph, I could see it. I could see it on you.
Well, I'm going to start with the truck. Didn't we already approve an expenditure last year for that? It may not be quite enough. But if I remember right, under the capital projects, there's still like $40,000 left for a vehicle. So I think we've already approved it. We may have to look at the difference because I think there's 40,000 left and the truck is 50 something. So the council may have to approve the expenditure of that extra 10,000 to get it. But my recollection is it's already been done.
You're correct, Ralph. It's in there. It's a little bit more than you say. I think it's around 44. The other issue is whether that could be repurposed towards these cruiser purchases or some other vehicle, depending on what the capital's recommendation is. But you're correct that there's at least 40 in there, and I think it's 44 or something like that.
And the impression I was given from the discussions I had here was that at some point during the year, and this was before I was here, that money was taken away or so to speak, or told, wait, don't spend it. And so I was under the impression that money wasn't available, which is why, just so that my thought process, which is why I included the truck in this capital request, because I was operating under the presumption of I have no more capital to spend on for that item. So
I think we just need to get that expanded. Should we approve it? So the FY22 amount for that truck would be whatever the balance would be, right? Is that you're thinking, Ralph and Mark?
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking, and I don't think it was last year. Wasn't it the year before that we approved it?
I think it was. Then there was some snags with, because it was the casino money, then it had to be approved differently.
that rings a bell. Yes, that's right. I'm sorry. Yes, you're
There
correct.
was a lot of confusion about the acquisition of vehicles and the timing of them and the upfitting costs and where that money was coming from. And I do think it was not a fiscal 21 allocation. It might have been 20,
I believe
probably it was
yeah.
20.
And if that's the case, couldn't we just go back to the council and ask for that additional to come out of free cash because now the price is more, and explain that we've already allocated this 2 years ago and we just need that little extra?
Yeah, just need to clean it up. I don't see why not. Steve, if you want to work on getting us
Yep.
the balance for that account, what the difference is,
Yeah, I'll find out for you.
that'd be great. So, what do you think the capital committee would need to vote on that, or just go right to council?
If it's already been approved and we're looking to add to it, I think it could go straight to council with the recommendation that the capital committee is in essence approving it,
Yeah,
but we don't have to have the approval as far as I know.
I'd like to reconsider it, frankly, from my chair.
okay. Would you want to reconsider the full amount or just the difference?
I want to reconsider the full amount. I mean, either or, we can certainly, if the pleasure of the committee and the council is to just put in the difference that's necessary, fine, but I think in light of all of our other needs, that may be one capital request that might have to be overlooked. But that's just my opinion for now.
All right, so we will consider that. Anyone else have any questions on the truck?
Yeah, I did have, so Mark, when I was reading the explanation about the need for the truck, the thought came in my head, why not a van? Because part of it was to be able to secure, bring things securely from one place to the other. And a pickup truck is, unless you have a cover or whatever, is pretty open, whereas a van, you'd have obviously a lot more space than a cruiser, but it would be an enclosed space. I was just curious about the thinking of pickup versus some other type of vehicle.
That's a good point. I think we were also balancing the ability to transport multiple people. Whereas like the van, I think that for those purposes, we would need to get something more like a utility van. And I'm just not sure that would set up as well for if the vehicle were being used for, 3 or 4 officers to go to the same training site somewhere. Though that is a valid point. I mean, there's definitely times where you want something covered. And there's certainly times when a van probably would be better than a pickup truck at transporting some things in some situations, but that was a thought process.
Yeah, so I thought some vans have removable seats and whatnot that you can throw in and almost seat up to 6 or 7 people, but you can take the back seat out and you have an expanded cargo area. It's just something to raise for consideration, particularly if we haven't bought it yet.
Okay, that's certainly a thought.
And Ralph, thank you for, well, that was the only, I kind of sit a little bit on Mary's camp there. It is approved, so we've already fought that battle. And I think the reason it got approved because of the ability to take advantage of the casino funds, as opposed to then the funds coming out of the town's budget. So, and if that's, when it's looked at, and that's, again, one of the few ways to make use of the casino funds. We should probably at least review it, but if it's there and that's one of the few uses we can make of it, you know, I would look at it differently than if it was just nothing else. So
Yeah.
that's all I had for the pickup truck question.
Ralph?
So Jim, I asked pretty much the same question 2 years ago with regards to the pickup truck. And at the time, Chief DeLassio explained to me, occasionally they need to get off-road into like the back areas where the quarries and all are. Van wouldn't work, where he felt the pickup truck would be able to get in there better. That was his explanation.
That's
I
another
just
good point.
followed that.
Thank you, Counselor.
All right, any other questions on the pickup? How about the 2 replacement cruisers? It's 2 vehicles purchased, upfitted, equipped, and marked would be approximately $95,200. It's a pretty standard request. You know, we see it every year. I don't have any questions on either of them. Mark, what's your appetite for splitting the truck out of your request and entertaining that separately?
I'm-
Imagine you're okay with that?
So I just had a couple of questions. It is, we do expect to see some type of capital request of this nature each year, rather than having to replace, you know, all the vehicles at one point. So they are replacements, Mark. They're not, neither of these are additional vehicles.
Correct. These are replacements for existing cruisers.
And I was looking, and this probably isn't what you had to deal with, but I was trying to find it on our 5-year capital plan in terms of where it shows that it, you know, this is an ongoing kind of projected capital expense. And I was having trouble, maybe because the list is a little small for me to read, but I would just want to make sure we have it in our 5-year projection that this is something we have to deal with every year.
Yes, I definitely need, I need to spend some more time looking at that and learning how to properly contribute and
Sure.
more things on there for everybody's benefit. So I will make the time to do that and make sure that.
So because you're new on the job, one question I have is, so if we have 8 vehicles and we replace 2 a year, does that kind of then suggest that we're none of our vehicles, as we do this over time, would be more than 4 years old?
Yes, that's a fair.
And is that the kind of the age where you would project that those things start having more issues than?
Yes. Yeah. In my experience, once you get past 3 years, that's when things start to really make themselves apparent. And so that I think that ideally, if we can stay on that 4-year cycle, that's really good.
I better buy a new car then. I'm way beyond that.
No, I am too. I am too in my personal vehicles, but somehow they just don't get the use that these cruisers do.
Yeah, we're not driving our cars 24/7.
And it might have got lost in the cutoff or whatnot, but in the actual submission of the purchases under the project details, it had the amount that included the pickup truck, but I didn't see a discussion of the pickup truck in the body of the project description, which, if we're going to separate it into 2, makes it that much easier, because you wouldn't have to add it. But other than that, that's all the questions I have.
Thank you.
All right, anything else from the committee for police capital requests? Mark, I did update the 10-year plan Google Doc and assign task to you to review what we had done. So obviously Mark just started on the 19th of January, and me and I'd done this really a 10-year capital plan, and kind of just threw together some numbers for the police department, taking the cars and just stretching it out for 10 years. So Mark, if you want to just review that and look at other projects that you foresee, minimum of 5 years, 10 years, if you're feeling ambitious, and we can get them added to that list.
All right, will do. I'm ambitious.
Ryan,
Well-
just one quick question. I noticed Dodge Durango is what we're looking at. I noticed in the past we've done other brands and stuff. Is it just based on what other police stations are doing? Is it just we feel that the Dodge is going to be more reliable? I mean, is there any reason to switch from one to the other? Is it cost?
I think it's a little bit of those, all three. I'm largely relying on the opinion of Sergeant Bruno, who's our guru in this stuff. And yeah, I mean, my background and experience is personally with Fords as police vehicles, and that's what I'm comfortable with. And I let him know that, but I also said, I'm not going to walk in the door and try to upset the apple cart. I trust his judgment. He shared with me, you know, the different experiences he's had with different makes. And so I'm going with what he'd like to do at this point.
Okay.
And these are all through the state bid.
Correct.
process, correct?
Yes, sir. And Dodge is, in defense of Dodge, they have come a long way in terms of designing their vehicles and doing specific police designs in these Durangos that Ford's been doing for a while on the Interceptor and Explorer models. But so it definitely, I've been impressed with what I've seen from the Dodges.
All right, thank you, Mark. If there's nothing else, I think we're all set with you for now.
Thank you, everybody.
Got
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you.
All right. I think we'll touch on fire real quick. You know, I'll share the screen so you guys can see what I'm looking at, kind of follow along a little better.
So maybe I didn't print off everything that you sent, Ryan, but I noticed that when I was going through stuff and it was a little too late to change anything. I couldn't find my package with the fire information.
I think that's my fault. Realizing that a lot of the stuff was just lease payments. I
Alright.
told the fire chief that he didn't have to submit anything. So that is.
So there's
That
nothing
makes me
more
feel
than
better.
so there's nothing more than continuing the lease payments.
There are, you can see my screen, he's got 4 projects that are submitted. So 2 of them are lease payments, and then the SCBA replacements for $20,000. That $20,000 is the town's portion of a much larger grant that he's has applied for. And if he's not successful in getting the grant, then we would not have to pay the $20,000. I'm not sure what the total dollar amount was, but it was significantly more. And then, yeah, so if he gets the grant, we got to pay 20,000 for our portion. And if not, then that 20,000 will just get kicked back to us. But he was very confident that he was going to get the grant for the SCBA replacements. Then the ambulance is a payment, ladder truck is a payment. Then the bunker gear is going to be sort of a cyclical replacement cost to bring all the gear up to date.
Ryan, is it possible for you when you make your comments to make the comment on the SCBA, you know, subject to receipt of a grant for whatever that amount is that would be the grant portion?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I did it as a comment, but I can put it like in a cell, so we can see it clearly printed out.
And the 2 lease payments, is it possible to know what year the payment is of how many years remaining?
Yep. Yep, absolutely. Let's see. Add year for payment.
I think the ladder truck is maybe year 4 or 5.
I think so too.
Yeah, and I think the ambulance might be 2 of 3 perhaps.
I think it's year 2, because we finished off 1, and this is, I believe, the second, the year 2 of this one. 2 of 3.
Yeah, this will be the third payment on that.
So would I find the following year payments on our 5-year plan?
They should be. They might not be. We're still trying to clean that up.
Jim, what we're trying to do on that is create a comprehensive plan, and that's why some of the data is not uploaded into it yet. We're collecting it, and then the intention was that it all be consolidated into a 10-year comprehensive plan that would incorporate all of that information. So apologize that it's not done yet, but it's not done yet.
No, understood. No, but my understanding, Mary, is that we do need to, or the town needs to, as part of the capital plan, have a 5-year plan that's presented, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah. The 10-year would incorporate the 5-year. It would just be hopefully more comprehensive than what is asked for initially, but.
Yeah.
It does look like it's the final payment for the ambulance and the final payment for the ladder truck. Because Paul has updated his 5-year plan. Yep. So yeah, this is 5 of 5 and this is 3 of 3.
Yep.
And then he's got the forecast for the third ambulance to start in 2025. You guys can see my screen, right?
Yes. Well, that's encouraging. Did he have any discussion about whether there was a new piece of equipment that he would be looking to acquire or replace once the ladder truck lease payment is completed?
I believe, yeah, engine 2, right here. Replacement of engine 2 in 1994. And it looks like he's got it broken out and do a 5-year lease to own as well.
Starting next year, but.
Yep, FY23.
And he's also elaborated on the next item, the bunker gear, the staggered replacement.
Yeah, and car 1 replacement.
Is it the first year of the bunker gear staggered replacement?
That's the 21 that is on our current submission for fiscal 22. And then you can see on the cell, the next one, 22,000, and the following year, 23.
Yeah, was that in our capital plan last year in terms of the 5-year?
I don't
I think not.
Yeah.
This is a new effort to get the more comprehensive plan. So I don't remember ever seeing it before, but Paul probably had it in his own mind, if not shared with us yet.
Yeah. Right.
Ryan, on this, do we have a general idea how long an ambulance lasts? I know we've had ambulance 1, now ambulance 2.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the
Are we looking at
total.
replacing in 7 years or something.
It's not forecast. I don't think he went too far into the 10-year plan. It's because I kind of threw it at him after the fact when he was putting it in his 5-year numbers. I'm like, well, why don't you just put in your 10-year numbers? But you can see he's got Rescue 3, which is the one that was donated, up for replacement in FY25. And then nothing forecast for replacements after that.
Okay.
And that was old when we got it. That was the gift from Palmer.
Yeah, actually,
I don't know how much life it had used up by the time, but they were ready to ditch it. And we spent about $2,500 in repairs to get it back on the road.
I was up there Friday, and that one's in rough shape, real rough.
Oh, understood. I think we took it only to get us by.
Yeah.
Until ambulance 2 came in. I don't think that was something we really thought about keeping for a long time or anything.
So I have to confess an ignorance to what bunker gear is.
It's the firefighter gear.
Is
Like
there any
the-
special reason why it's called bunker?
I have no clue. I'm gonna, let me see what Paul's doing.
That's not necessary to clarify it now, but I just for my own education. When I think of bunker, I think of huddling down in a, you know, in a bomb shelter or something.
We,
Sorry. Fire Chief Paul Morissette.
All right, he's gonna hop in.
Paul, if you're around, call me back, please. We're on the Capitol and there was a question about what bunker gear is comprised of.
Yeah, I was just talking to him, Mary. That's why.
Oh. Is he coming in?
Yeah. I'm sending him an invite right now.
What is it?
Send.
Turnout gear bunker.
Just, I'd rather get everyone's questions answered now. This way we can get it taken care of.
Debbie's husband was a firefighter. She said it's the turnout gear they wear, the coats, the jackets, the pants.
Right.
So it's basically their gear.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, minus the breathing apparatus, which is the grant money one.
Ryan, the ambulances, that comes out of the, like an ambulance revolving fund, right?
Yep. So on the sheet here, you can see the funding code.
Yep.
And that's what the A and B is for the ambulance enterprise fund.
So would there be a reason why we're gonna skip 2 years in between getting ambulance 3? If it's automatically coming out of the ambulance revolving fund, wouldn't it make sense to move those up so that it's just consistent?
Right. So then you could start with the replacement of rescue 1 at the end of that, you're thinking?
That's what I'm thinking. If
He's- he
it's
should-
paying for it.
He's at a vaccination clinic right now and he's just firing up his laptop.
Well, I mean, the explanation I just heard really is probably sufficient for me. That there wasn't anything, it's just I guess a term that is used in the fire world, I guess. So,
And I know he was telling me that the gear is significantly more expensive now than it used to be. And he was saying when he first got on, it was, you know, a fraction of what it costs now to replace it.
This is the same item that the council just approved a transfer out of free cash because of the fire that was over at the printing place on Benton.
Yeah,
They,
the fire.
they had oil soaked turnout gear that couldn't be cleaned and we're still awaiting a insurance claim, potential insurance claim on that.
So would that work as the first year? Considering we're replacing a whole chunk of it?
You know, I think it's replacing what he needs right now, Ralph.
Okay.
That's a good question though, because it could be the FY22 replacements if we replace enough of the sets.
Here I am trying to get them ambulances quicker. See, I'm not that bad.
yeah, well, we might need them, Ralph.
Exactly.
Right? You want to drive around the old one.
The date ambulance. Actually, Ryan, while we're waiting,
Yeah. What's up?
I've got a question as far as the police budget. Has there ever been any talk in the past or now about either body cameras or cruiser cameras or anything like that? I don't even know if they have them now or if there's been any thought or talk about it.
They do not have them now. I don't know. I haven't talked to Mark about it. It's on my list to meet with Mark and kind of start going over some of the technology that we have and where I would like to help them get to. I can say Mark's very technology focused and oriented and would definitely be open to doing something like that.
It's been a long winter. I watch a lot of YouTube videos.
You watch the whole YouTube?
Pretty much.
All those issues have union ramifications, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
I understand that. And like I said, I just wasn't sure if it was even anything to do with a conversation.
Yeah. Well, you know, depending on the client, certainly the social climate would suggest that it's relevant. I don't know the appetite for it in this community necessarily, but you know, it kind of goes to the overall police spending. There's a
Right.
lot of sentiment that perhaps it should be reduced as opposed to increased, but that's a conversation for a coffee break, I guess.
Looks like Paul's joined. Paul, thanks. I know I kind of threw it at you here. Thanks for joining the meeting. Got a couple questions, kind of more around your 5-year plan. We're looking to just clean up. I figured just with our tight turnaround time, having you just pop on and answer them quick for us would help make sure that we can get the capital plan completed in the set time frame. So Jim wants to know what bunker gear is. We think we got an answer.
Muted,
for
Paul.
You're muted.
Unmute.
There you go.
Yeah. The bunker gear is the firefighter turnout gear. It's a complete set. It's your boots, your pants, gloves, coat, hood, helmet. NFPA, in their infamous wisdom, has put a 10-year lifespan on it. Everything when you data manufacturers is on the gear when you buy it. And quite frankly, our gear is when it's 10 years old, it's still in decent shape because we're not a busy city when it comes to firefighting. But unfortunately, if something were to happen 10 years, 6 months, or 11 years into it, and somebody has that gear on, they tell you it's non-compliant anymore. And they haven't come out with any type of inspection program where you can send them gear that's 10 years old, then they can inspect it for you and give you another 5 years. They're not doing that. I think it's a racket, my own opinion, but it's something that we're responsible for. I have gotten gear in the past on a grant, but we have seen because of the past year or so, because of COVID, the grants have tightened up quite a bit. I will always keep applying for grants, but I figured the best thing for us to do is just try and stagger replacements, so many sets a year, and that way we always have at least somebody with a set of compliant gear in the, you know, we're not buying 20-something sets all at once. The standard now is they're actually asking for departments to have 2 sets of gear for people, because when their gear comes back from a fire and it's loaded with carcinogens, they want you to take that out of service and give your guy another set of gear. We're not at that point in our department. We have spare gear, but not one set for everybody. We have a few spare sets now that we do that with. Somebody may put that gear on. It may be a little large on them, but at least it's going to get them through the pinch and while their gear is being cleaned in-house and put back in service.
So this is a relatively new requirement, Paul, in terms of the 10-year usage.
It's been around for like 5 years now, maybe a little bit longer, but I've been trying to, my goal was always to apply for the grant, but it's what we've seen, other chiefs have seen, it's getting harder and harder, because quite frankly, there's more and more people doing it, and they're not upping the amount of the grant that the feds are funding.
All right, thank you.
Oh, what is the total amount for the SCBA replacements? I know the 20,000 is the town's portion, but what was the total amount?
I believe it was just over 100,000, Ryan.
Okay.
So the total is 120, Paul?
Yes. Yeah.
Jim, let me just weigh in here that I've asked the department heads to think ahead. So these 5 and 10-year potential expenditures are for planning purposes, not necessarily always going to be required or necessary once that next fiscal year rolls around. But between Ryan's efforts and Steve's and mine, what I'm trying to do is think longer term and make plans so that we don't get caught unaware for these types of things. So you may see a number of, when you do see the 10-year plan or anyone sees it, there may be items on it that you might say, well, gee, where did that come from? But it's the result of a request to think longer term and try to define what the town's reasonable needs will be for that extended period. So that's probably why Paul's thinking that way, although he's always 2 steps ahead of the rest of us in terms of his planning. But I hope that helps in some.
No, I appreciate that effort.
Then, Paul, one of the other questions that had come up before I kind of threw you under the bus here and brought you into the meeting was the general fund transfer that you got to replace the damaged bunker gear. Does that offset the FY22 request at all?
No, because that's the gear that was damaged and taken out of service. I mean, it could offset it 5 years from now.
Right.
Because the gear, I think most of the gear that's being replaced is 5 years old now. So that would offset it 5 years from now.
Okay. And Ralph, you want to ask him your ambulance question?
Sure. The first question, Paul, is do we have a rough idea of how long like ambulance 1 would be in service? I mean, is it typically a 7-year or 10-year, and then you're looking for a new one?
I think it's like a 6-year, based on the mileage. We're going to be at that 200,000 mile mark within the 6-year, probably sooner than a 6-year mark. I do have a little gap in there between the Rescue 2 and then purchasing of Rescue 3. Rescue 1 wouldn't be completely out of service. We would just use that as our new mechanical spare, which is what the one we got from Palmer Ambulance is doing right now. It's still available to be in service. We're not staffing it, but when one of them goes out of service for maintenance, that'll roll back in the process and be our second ambulance. So we keep it maintained. We don't keep it equipped because quite frankly, some of that equipment is expensive to have just sit on the shelf. But that's my best estimate for when I think we're going to need to purchase a new one. I would love to start, and I don't know how it's possible. If Steve has a creative way of taking some of that ambulance revenue every year and we put it, we basically
stabilization fund,
like a stabilization fund, and it's strictly for capital purchase of a new ambulance in 2 or 3 years when we need it. And that way, when I come to capital, I'm not looking for it for 3 years. I'm looking for it for 1 year, but it's coming from revenue, and we're not paying the additional interest for the leaks. If you kind of see what I'm saying there.
I understand what you're saying. I just thought it would be easier if we had a lease payment each year and basically at the end of 3 years, we own it. By the time we reach the end of, the 2 ambulance payments, you're starting on the 3rd one. That way there's just no gap in between.
they'll give us 6-year replacements on everything.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right now there is a little bit of gap just because of how the ambulances were purchased to get to that 2 ambulance level. So there will be a 2-year gap in there right now.
But there probably doesn't have to be if we move that up, and that way we're just cycling through quicker. I'm trying to give you more, Paul.
I get it. I'm always interested in more.
I guess my question to that, Ralph and Paul, I guess if you figured it to start 2 years from when the last payment for the ambulance is off, is that because you don't estimate that you'll need the 3rd ambulance until then?
That's correct.
Okay. So I hear what you're saying, Ralph, and generally I would agree with you, but I'm not sure if we we don't anticipate needing it, does it make sense to pay for it sooner rather than later?
So by that third ambulance, does that mean you want 3 rescue ambulances running at all times? Or is the third one, like the one that we just got from Wilbraham, like a backup?
It would, so the new one would become a primary and the rescue one would become
The backup.
mechanical backup, and the current rescue 3, which is the one we got from Palmer Ambulance, that would go bye-bye. I'm running out of space in the fire station, first of all, to operate 3 ambulances and staff 3 ambulances is, it wouldn't, I'm gonna.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
just
I
gonna
understand.
politely say that.
completely. I just wanted.
That's probably for the next fire chief to try and figure out.
It's your tongue.
I know. Don't you go talking like that.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm just saying that's a few years out.
Okay,
We need
thank you,
to-
Paul. My
we
heart
need to
can
have-
start beating again at a regular pace.
We need to show a little more revenue before I can go in front of the council, and actually before in front of Mary first and say, hey, I need more guys. I'm comfortable where I'm going, but I don't want to push the envelope.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. Does anyone else have any questions for Paul about fire submissions? All right. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
How's everybody? Does anybody want to take a break, or you want to jump right into IT?
Go ahead, but I'm gonna go pour another coffee.
Okay. I'll start off with the one-to-one replacements. That, as in years past, I've put as kind of like a priority 0 because it's just a cyclical thing that happens every year. And in FY21, that amount was reduced. So what I had done, instead of making the FY22 number much higher, I split the difference from the FY21 number, the shortage, over FY22 and FY23. So if I can switch over to here, go up to the IT stuff. So typically, to maintain our current level of one-to-one computers, it's 105,000 a year, where our current fiscal year was shorted. So I just added it to 22 and 23 to well, I guess flatten the curve, to use the coin term. I also did the same thing with the computer replacements, these lines right here. This number was also reduced from the request, and I spread it out over FY22 and FY23 likewise, just to kind of flatten it out a little bit for us. Let's go back to the categories and we'll work on the list. The next big ticket item for IT requests is network upgrades. So our core network, the center of our network, is 2 big switches that handle everything. Everything plugs into that. We have 2 separate switches that work as a virtual switch. So if one of them fails, the other one takes over. These now are 14 years old. So they are completely end of support. They will be end of support. They're still supported now, but they will be end of support, end of upgrades, end of everything. So if something happens, we can't even call. They're going to tell us we're out of luck. So that's where that upgrade number comes from. Next on the list is server upgrades. This is for our physical servers for this year.
Ryan, just a question on the network upgrade.
Sure.
So that's the physical cost to purchase the new, what is it? Is it software? Is it hardware?
It's actual physical hardware to replace 2 Cisco 6506s with new equipment in the server room, which is like the actual physical center of our network.
No.
Then the next one is server upgrades. This is, so we funded one for FY21 to replace one of our camera servers, which is, I think it was 11 years old. This is to replace the next one. So we have three security camera servers that run about 230 cameras across our network from every school, every town building. We got one on the Rotary. We got one at Harkness in North Main, well, 5 at Harkness in North Main. And they all feed back to these servers, and they obviously need to be maintained. The second one, this will be to replace the second one, which is probably at this point 9 years old. And then next year we would replace the third one, and then trying to keep them on a 5-year replacement schedule. Next up is desktops, staff MacBooks, iPads, which we are using for our one-to-one in pre-K to first grade, and then non-one-to-one Chromebooks. The non-one-to-one Chromebooks would include anything that's outside of our one-to-one program. So board members' Chromebooks, the public library has Chromebooks. This is to maintain those as well.
Maintain meaning to buy new ones to replace old ones?
Yes, yep, to keep them up to date. Next is phone upgrades. So our phones, so we have 2 phone servers that handle, we got like 420 phones, I believe. We have 2 physical servers that maintain those. One's in town hall, one's behind the fire department. And the one that's in town hall is currently already out of support, end of life. There's a hardware failure already on it. And the board that monitors the hardware in the server has also failed. So it beeps and we can't turn off the beeping anymore. You can't access it. It's completely end of support. I tried to get help with it and they can't even help us with it.
So Ryan, listening to your explanation, I'm wondering about the priority number 7.
I'll get to that. Next down is a permitting software upgrade. This right now we use Munis to do our permitting. So building permits, DPW permits, they all get entered into Munis. We attach the physical applications to them. The issue we have is Munis doesn't really support development of their permitting system anymore. They maintain it. They have, I think, 1 or 2 people that are on their permitting team, but they're basically trying to sunset it. We would like to find a better solution, something with online applications, something to help increase the workflow or improve the workflow of the permitting system. But that's kind of where that dollar amount is. We didn't really have time this year to look at different vendors, so this is a carryover from last year's submission. Longmeadow had gone with a system that was significantly cheaper and had gotten me excited, but I've heard they've had a lot of issues with it, which is unfortunate. And then next up is the building automation upgrade. This is in working with building facilities. The controllers that run the majority of the schools are end of life, end of support. The reason it's a lower priority is Public Works had purchased a few spares before they went end of support and before the prices skyrocketed. So we're in not decent shape, we're in okay shape before that becomes a much higher priority. So a few things that we're looking at is the phone server upgrade. We have applied for grant money to replace it. I'm hoping that we're successful. I believe we will be. And if we are, then this phone upgrade falls off the capital list. Same with staff MacBooks. We have applied for grant money for that as well. And actually it's to replace all of the staff MacBooks, not just a cyclical number. So that would impact us by taking it off the list this year and actually for the next 5 years. So I'm really hoping we can get that. The That's all I got for explanations. Questions?
I had one, Ryan, on the network upgrades. Is that a dire need at this point? Is that why you've rated it number one, obviously? And are you saying that the support for all of that is end of life, or the equipment itself is end of life?
The
And what
equipment-
kind of
equipment-
risks?
The
that
equipment's
pose?
been end of life for a couple of years, but they still supported it. So the equipment that we had purchased, I think it was 14 years ago, it might be a little less, but it's at least 10, was like a super enterprise class level of hardware that they support much longer than their typical hardware. It's now just becoming time where it's time to replace it now.
Okay,
So once that goes into support, if something happens to one of those switches, everything will be down and we have nobody we can even call to help us.
okay.
Not a position I would like to be in.
Ryan, on that same item, is it an all or nothing solution? Meaning, is there anything you can do that isn't the full 200,000 that gets you by, or just curious?
We could phase in. So the system we're looking to replace, the new system would be smaller switches. So instead of having two big chassis switches, it'd be more smaller switches. So we could phase it in where we bought a couple of those switches and then move the critical services to that, where if the 6500s, the big ones that we have now that will be into support, if those were to fail, then we would lose more non-critical services. It is something I could look at if that's the committee's feeling, but it is something we could break up.
I would be curious just to know, in terms of an option to consider.
Yeah.
The one-to-ones, that's what all the school kids are using to work remotely.
Yeah, and that's been, I mean, obviously I don't have to tell anybody what the last year has been like, but having been in the position where we already had our one-to-one established, and for the most part from grades 6 to 12 distributed, I mean, we were light years ahead of other districts. I communicate, hourly with Long Meadow and a couple other districts, and they're still scrambling, trying to catch up. I've seen what the schools have done with our hybrid learning and our remote learning, and just from our niece that lives with us, has seen significant improvement in. She's on honor roll this year, where the last year we had to chase her because the work wasn't getting done. The school's done a great job, and having the one-to-one program already established definitely put us way ahead of the rest of the districts. And it's like anything else, it's something that has to be maintained and updated. The one thing too with Chromebooks are, as soon as they release a Chromebook, there is an established end of support date on it. Once it reaches that end of support date, then they don't guarantee it will work with the, whatever Google comes up with, whether they come up with a new app or they update an existing app. They don't no longer guarantee it'll work with that. And we've run into it where we've used our older ones that are end of support to make do with our lower grades, so second grade and first grade with Chromebooks, and they don't run a lot of the things that they needed, and we had to scramble and swap them out with other ones just to get them up to snuff and be able to do the apps that they need.
Ryan, the equipment staff MacBooks, $118,000. That, how many MacBooks does that assume get replaced in a year?
So we're having the snowplow effect where we haven't replaced any, and it's starting to come over the top. So that's about 100 MacBooks, 137 about, or like $879, I think, each. So we have a funding request in for some of the, I think it's under CARES money or under one of the school grants, to replace all of them. So 200, replace all 250. That gets us, that puts us way ahead of the curve where we don't have to worry about it for 5 years.
And is the 44,000 for iPads, is that kind of fall into the same issue? It's more than 1 year because we didn't fund it fully in the previous year.
Yep, exactly. Yep. And a lot of our iPads are the same thing where they're so old they can't run the apps that Meadowbrook has.
Ryan, should I assume that did you actually complete these project detail for each of these projects, or is this basically what you're covering now as in place of that?
What I'm covering now is in place of that. I have quotes for a lot of the stuff. I'm not sure if you guys received those. I had forwarded what Bruce had, and I don't think those quotes were in there. I can get those over to you though.
I guess I should have taken better notes.
Yeah, I mean, if you want, I can send over a synopsis of them. Obviously this is recorded, so you can always look back and see what we discussed. But I can write up blurbs too on each of the different projects.
Well, I mean, I think in the past you've kind of done a cover letter that kind of discussed the items, it's all what the committee feels, but I would feel a little bit better having something that I could read and keep reminding myself what these items are and what the issue is. So if it were possible to do just like a summary letter, just the basic things that you covered without necessarily doing every single individual sheet, I would find it helpful, but I'll defer to the rest of the committee.
I think it's reasonable, so I don't have a problem with it.
Right.
Any other questions on? I know Ralph's got something for us.
I don't actually.
Come on.
You've pretty much answered all my questions I would have had, so.
I'll get that letter out probably maybe later today or tomorrow. But we got more capital tomorrow, so I'll try and get it to you later today. All right. Now, if there's nothing else for IT, do we want to look at starting to do categories, or do we want to do that individually and then talk about it?
So question for you about that, the categories, Ryan. We did this process last year, right?
Yep.
And there's a number of these projects that were also on last year. Can we just use those categories, or?
That's a good point. I can take care of that, and then maybe we can do the ones we don't have tomorrow after schools.
Right, and then yeah, that's what I was thinking. We could deal with the ones that are new and categorize those as opposed to going all through all of them again.
Yeah, yep. Cut off the low-hanging fruit. All right. Other than that, I don't think we have anything else. Actually, let me look at what we have for follow-ups.
Brian, I can report that the CPC the other night voted to approve that resurfacing of the high school track. That's under the ELPS.
That's good news.
Yes, I mean, the council hasn't approved it yet, but it will be forwarded for their consideration. So I'm fairly confident they will approve it, in which case that $134,000 project could come off of this.
Oh, that's right. I put it down below.
There you go. Yeah.
Now, that's probably actually a question for Gordon tomorrow. Are we with CPC finding the 134? Is the 28,000 still coming from the rental revolving account?
Yes, he's committed to that.
Okay. Perfect.
And I don't know if it probably has been removed, but the Friends of the Library did fund in total the library recarpeting. So if that's still under DPW's somewhere, it can go out. In fact, the second phase is occurring right now.
Excellent.
Great news.
All right, let's see here. Steve, you want to give a follow-up on the sidewalk bonding? You're muted. Steve, you're muted.
Steve, you're muted.
There you
There
go.
you
Funny,
go.
most people say I'm not muted enough, but it's on average, if we pay, it'll be an average of $75,142 a year. And based on that, we could borrow $930,000 in principal, the difference being interest we would be paying. So that'd be over 15 years. And again, the work of this money would have to be done within 2 years.
Does that answer your question, Ralph?
It does.
Then
It's just whether or not that's the path we choose to take is to try and do $900,000 worth of walks now. Or if we save for 3 or 4 years and do 100,000. And my only concern is the cost of construction's going up so high.
Yeah.
It's a lot higher than the 2.5% or whatever that we're paying in the bond.
And didn't Bruce indicate that depending on the scope of that project, it would have to be outsourced?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll put a follow-up. I'll see how much of our master plan we can get done with. Well, what was it, Steve? 980?
The principal would be, we'd be borrowing 930.
Okay. We have $1 million in there already. How much we have in the sidewalk fund, do you know?
I think we have 150, don't we?
150. We have 150 in for a request. I'm not sure what we have in there now still.
It's not a great deal more than that, Ryan.
I don't even think it's that.
930K bonded. How much do we get done? All right, see if I can remember what that means later.
So I'm just rattling around in my mind. So if we did that, if we went that route, we'd be borrowing another 900 to $1 million a year for the next 12 years. I mean, if taking it to its logical conclusion.
Borrow 930K now, and then
Right.
just put the 75K a year to paying off the principal interest.
Oh, all right. It's a one.
And that's-
fell swoop.
and Don't
Right.
forget, that's
Sorry.
based on the rates now at 2.5%. If the economy changes and banks start cranking up the rates, it will cost more, obviously, as we go up.
And then we would wait 15 years before we decided to do,
Another big chunk.
right.
Gotcha.
No,
Ralph.
we're not. It's still gonna be 50 to 80 years to get all the sidewalks done.
Sometimes it takes a while for the rattling to settle down.
The other thing, I followed up via the email was the Lee Street sidewalk. Does that answer your question, Ralph?
Yeah, I saw that. It's just on my map. It looks like 3 separate.
Okay.
Either way, it doesn't make a difference. Like I said, we know it's. So I would highly recommend if we went with sidewalks that we did not do Lee Street, because the road's already plenty wide enough. And all they got to do is just put a row of paint down, give people 2 feet to walk. But again, that's down the road. Let's see if we can even figure out the financing.
Next follow-up is on Heritage Park. I sent the majority of the information that I could find. I talked with Don Mackey, seeing if there was other information to be had, and he didn't recall anything other than what I'd already sent. I'm not sure if you had a chance to watch the council meeting and the where it was originally proposed. But what's the committee's feeling on moving forward, at least with the initial planning stages of looking to fund that project with CPC doing the debt service? that clear enough, Mary? Or anything you want to add?
I'm all for it. Again, this is one of those vague things that, to Jim's earlier point about it's a plan. And I think my concern is that we get initial assent or approval. I think most of the counselors whose opinions I'm familiar with are in favor of this. And I think it needs to be on the long-term comprehensive planning tool that we're going to be using. So the initial bonding and the debt service, I think Steve said it was like 485. I did, by the way, Ralph, check with park grants, and there is an open season this coming summer. Bethany was going to look into that and did, in fact. And then there's obviously the CPC funding source and bonding and so on. But for this year, the phase that Bruce was ready to begin was the design phase, which was that 358 or 378,000, somewhere in that neighborhood. So I would like to get going and approve at least that much and have the overall the 7.3 million as the the ultimate cost of that project, at least as of today, and be mindful that in 2016 it was under 5 million for the same project. So I don't know if we've actually vetted the exponential increase, but I'm not surprised, but it's still a lot of money that's at stake. So I want to go forward with it. The exact mechanism to do that, I'm not quite certain of just yet, but I think the proper placeholder for it is in the comprehensive 10-year plan.
Steve, I apologize for putting you on the spot, but do we know how much money the CPC takes in a year? Do they take in like
Based off the taxes, I don't have the exact number right now, but we want to say it's isn't it 2% of your tax?
One here in East Long Meadow, but then the Commonwealth funds that at another percentage from the fees that are collected at the registry and other places. So that amount changes year to year.
Right now, they have a healthy balance in their funds.
So do we take in enough money to cover the debt service?
I don't think we take in 485 a year. No.
No, not even close to that, about 230,000.
But are you suggesting that the CPC fund would be able to fund the design study?
Well, I think they could from current funds. Yes.
You've reached Don Ponte, Pleasant Treasure.
I was trying to call Dawn, but she getting her voicemail.
I guess I'm probably okay with moving forward with design funds. I guess my big question about the 7 million is, can it be phased, and how can it be phased, even though, because it is a grand design, but I mean, perhaps it can be done in pieces, because 7 million seems like a big chunk, particularly when we still got the high school, issue looming, so, and frankly, I don't think I've ever seen this on our 5-year capital plan before, or at least the last 2 years. I don't recall it.
I don't think you ever have seen it there. I think that's something that I decided to put there as I keep calling it a placeholder, so to speak, just to continue the conversation, because the original design was done in 2016, I believe. And so it's been lingering for a while. So I wanted to put it somewhere where it won't be.
Well, no, I thoroughly agree, Mary. I mean, that's I think the whole point of having this and putting it somewhere, because we haven't put it into our thoughts or calculations for the last 2 years in terms of how it fits or how it could be done. So I think absolutely it was an excellent step to put it on, because that's the whole purpose of it. Yeah.
I think it can certainly be done in phases, and there's no, I'm not totally wedded to the prospect that every item in the original design had to be implemented. I mean, I think there's room, obviously, for conversation about, I think at one point there was discussion about basketball courts. Another time there was discussion about how many soccer fields or walking trails or a splash park, or different phases of the overall design could be incorporated or eliminated depending on people's appetite for certain activities or whether there's another location in town where they might be more suitable. So, and then also there's recently the Recreation Commission members have formed a 501c3 for fundraising for town's athletic and recreation activities. So there may be another source of contribution to the cause from those efforts. So there's just a lot of moving parts, but I think sooner or later we'll get to a product that everybody could be happy with, piecemeal, of course, but that would be the goal. I don't know, Ralph, you were involved a long time ago with that. Do you have any thoughts about this?
So yes, when I was on CPC, we actually voted for the initial $25,000 for Berkshire to do. It was a 3-part design, so it was 3 different options. And I know the Rec Commission had chosen one out of those 3. And that was to basically get the ball rolling. Now, if I remember right, a year ago or so, we voted like $114,000 out of CPC to do design work on the first third of it. We were going to do like a 3-part series because my question was, I wanted to make sure that we weren't spending money and then tearing it apart to do phase 2. And I don't believe any of that has been allocated or spent, or any design has even been started on it.
You're correct. In fact, the John Torsha indicated at the meeting the other night that his intention was to bring a motion before the council asking them to essentially rescind that motion for that 113 or 114. That was the subject of the video that Ryan forwarded in case, to be sort of returned to the undesignated pool of CPC funds to be applied on the design and the architectural and construction documents for the current version of the product. So that money's not been spent, and it would go to the, as I said, it would go to the same
Pool.
goal of getting the design and construction documents drawn.
And,
So
in anticipation of that, talking with Bruce Fenny, we added that money back into the construction document and redevelopment submission. So originally it was the 350 or whatever it was. Now it's the 471.5. That is inclusive of the money that's already allocated being rescinded. I don't know if I said that way too.
So now, yeah, I'm a little confused.
yeah,
So the request was 358. We've added it to 471, but all right, I'm still not sure what the difference is.
We increased the request to 471 with the assumption that that money is going to be rescinded.
Yeah,
Right, but why do we need another 113 over the original request, I think is where Jim's going.
right.
If the construction documents were gonna cost 358, why do
It's
they?
because the original request included spending that 113.
Okay. So you've just added the numbers together for purposes.
113, what my understanding was like a start of funding the construction documents. But you can't start that process, I guess, without having the full amount.
yeah, that wasn't my understanding when we approved it at the council level, is we approved the 114, which was going to be basically the documents for phase 1. And then once you go further and you decide to do more, then you do the documents for that.
Yeah, I don't know if that is still, I don't know. And it's awfully hard going backwards.
Yeah.
3 or 4 years trying to figure out what someone believed or what the opinions were. It's very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, that makes some sense to me, Ralph, that, you design a phase and then maybe design the next phase, as long as you had an overall master plan as to what it would look like at the end. The 350, so I'm still not sure because I got the impression the 358 was to do the design of the entire thing, so why would we have to spend the 140?
So really what,
Asked for it, yeah.
what it comes down to is 471 is the cost to design everything.
Right.
That's what I understand now, but we can get clarification on that.
Yeah, Yeah.
And then I've got a question for Steve. Under your CPC numbers, did the ones that you sent to us, did that include the 114,000? Is that just what's in their account and not what's been allocated? Because there's a couple different things, projects that money was allocated for. I just want to make sure that we're not
Yep.
double spending.
Yeah, that was the balance as of the day I ran the balance sheet. So it didn't include any expenditures that had been done, that hadn't been done, that may have been earmarked, unless they were reserved out.
Okay. So there's still possible earmarks that would come out of that.
Yeah, it's my understanding though that they hadn't done, and what we looked at, they hadn't done anything in a few years, or at least a year or two anyways. So there wasn't anything in the hopper that I knew of.
Yeah. I know that 114 was earmarked, and I believe there's still, I mean, we talked about a 10,000 for the Norcross driveway that looked like there was an outstanding balance. I think those are the only
Those are
two
the
items.
motions for your meeting tonight.
Yep.
Or if not tonight, the next one. I know there were a couple of small dollar amounts that CPC was looking for.
Mm.
But I know the 113 has not been spent. So where it resides at the moment, I'm not clear, but it's still in-house. No offense.
So we'll work on clarifying the construction document funding. Is it the committee's desire to have the construction documents reduced to a single phase? Which I think was what was assumed for the 113.
would be good to clarify, you know, the rationale between, or the pros and cons between, you know, spending the full 358 to get the whole thing done versus if the theory was that it made sense to do the design work on a phased basis as well. I'd be curious the reconciliation between the two thought processes.
Okay. Yeah, I know I discussed it, I think, with Bruce, but I don't remember, unfortunately.
Yeah. I did have like a dumb question, and that is, the town bought this property called the Brown property. And I know it was purchased, and one of the theories was it was going to provide fields for the town. Did it turn out that that land just was not conducive to that purpose? Is that?
From what I can recall from the presentation, it was cost prohibitive. I know they had looked at doing a couple fields there, but it just was too expensive for the town to really look at completing. Ralph, do you remember any better than I do?
So Jim, a lot of it comes in is the wetlands. About 3/4 of the property is actually wetlands. Pioneer Valley Planning Commission has done a full study, which is on the town's website, the Brown
somewhere.
property study. And they wanted some affordable housing in and stuff like that. We chose a plan, but when you start to look at it, the cost to put in each field was just astronomical.
Yeah, October 2011.
All right, thanks, Ralph.
I'll forward you the link to it. All right. What do we have anything else for our capital meeting?
Hey, Ryan, can I quickly, you sent something for the clerk's office for the record keeping.
Yep.
I know we had done through CPC some historical microfilm or scanning and
Yeah.
keeping of documents.
Yep.
Is this something that could continue through CPC, or are these present documents where that wouldn't work?
I haven't talked to Jeannie about it. I think Mary, you talked to her about it.
Yeah, I
You know,
did.
My thought was the same as yours, Ralph, where it would just be a continuation of an existing project, but I think the intention of the submission is different. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Mary, sorry.
initially, I thought maybe a community compact grant or some sort of CPC funding, but it's not maintenance. Or I should say, it's more a labor sort of request, because what Jeannie's looking for is shelving and organization and basically kind of a manual labor effort to get the documents that are currently stored in the clerk's office in, I guess, some degree of disarray to her, that's not to her satisfaction. So I've asked her to check with CPC. She's actually on the CPC committee in her hometown. She didn't get a good response there, but that's not the end of the line. And I also received an email recently from Senator Lesser's office asking if we had any little projects around 30 or 25,000 that could be earmarked if we'd forward that. So Jeannie has given me some more information. I'm going to forward that request to them in hopes that they can fund it. And maybe she can elaborate later, but I don't really know that it's even a capital request, but for the fact that it meets our threshold for capital, it's a maintenance issue. It's a maintenance issue.
And I noticed she made the comment about, the records in the cellar. Is she also looking at the ones that are in the attic?
Don't know.
The
Perhaps.
town hall has an attic?
I know from my planning board days that Donna either used to have to take a hike upstairs into
Oh,
the attic
yes.
to find the records, or
Wow.
downstairs into the basement.
Yeah.
So
We got our 10,000 steps here in East Long Meadow.
exactly. I just figure if we're doing it and we're trying to organize, if we put it all together as one project to get everything organized.
Yeah, it's a good idea. So that deserves more discussion, and I'll catch up with Jeannie about it.
I just know historical on CPC, there's limited things that they're able to spend the money on, the Norcross House and little
Yeah.
schoolhouse. And if this is something, because 5% of their budget automatically goes into it, this would be a good fit if it worked.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd love to see more stuff get scanned, I don't like
I agree.
people sitting around, and we already have, so with that initial expenditure from CPC, we have Laserfiche software system where we can just upload the scanned documents, it automatically OCRs them, and we can then just search based off of text. We had all the old town reports done, and it was cool. I typed in, Quimby into it, and I could see where my mom petitioned town meeting to get sewer installed in our neighborhood back in like 1987.
It's pretty cool.
Okay.
Anything else? We have enough fun for today. We can loop back tomorrow.
What's up for tomorrow, Brian?
What's up?
What's up for tomorrow? Who's on?
Schools. So primarily the schools, hear their presentation on their capital projects, and then hopefully get into categorizing. That's what I gotta do. It's another category list. Send something else updated. Sorry, I gotta take notes or I will completely forget. Then we'll work on getting the category lists more finalized. And then on the 16th, we will work on finalizing it, voting on it, and sending it to Mary. It's tight. It's a lot of work. I'm already thinking about what we can do to improve for next year, short of obviously more time. But
Starting on Halloween next year.
I was thinking starting in September. So
Isn't that when you guys used to start? It was like
Well-
October, the capital would start.
the old bylaws said the capital plan had to be done by September.
Well, we'd like to think that COVID upset, there are some silver linings to COVID that I guess, I don't know. Still trying to define what they are, but
Don't worry, we'll have this capital done by September.
I trust that you will.
short of any further discussion, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll take a roll call vote. Starting from the top, Mary,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
and I am also a yes. Next meeting, I'll see you guys tomorrow at 10 a.m.
Thank you, Ryan.
Good.
Thank you, Ryan.
Ryan.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.